Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Get Stuff Done podcast. My name is Gordon Dudley, your host, and I'm really glad to be able to welcome another guest to the show for this third episode, where we're going to be talking about getting stuff done and learning about some of the personal insights and stories of our guest today. Today, I'm joined by Joe Tofield. He is originally from the UK, but currently based in Singapore, where he has been living for over 10 years. He is the owner and director of LinguaLearn, a business which he has set up relatively recently, but he has actually been working in the field of learning and development for more than a decade. I'm really excited to be able to talk to him today and looking forward to hearing all about his journey in getting stuff done. Joe, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'm based in Seoul and you're based in Singapore. But we had the chance to meet in Singapore a few months ago, and we also have a similar background with the British Chamber of Commerce, which we both had big involvements in the past. But tell me a little bit about how you have come to be the director and owner of LinguaLearn in Singapore.
It's a great question. So I moved to Singapore the end of 2012. So in Holland, I was doing very much a cold calling sales job for new clients and things like that. And then when I moved here at the British Council, they needed just a salesperson essentially to get new clients and generate leads and things like that. So the role was quite straightforward in that regard. But because it was a training organization and a learning team, over the years, I went to client meetings, attended trainings, accompanied trainers on calls and things like that. So I just kind of learned the ropes of how the company works and how the training industry works and things like that. And as I moved up, I took over marketing and all kinds of sales and things like that. And I ended up attending client meetings on my own and consulting with them and things like that. I evolved the training that we did a little bit. So less of standalone trainings, and we started to consult quite a bit more. So we're building more learning structures and learning programs within companies. So I had the privilege to go into very large multinationals here and really see from the inside how they do learning and development and things like that. So I just learned like a ton of stuff during those years. Then I moved to a school group. So I was a regional head of teacher training for 4.5 years. So that was running a team of 9, and we were training about 20 to 25,000 teachers a year in Asia. Wow. Across over 1,000 schools, right? So you can imagine the operation is very large scale. We have thousands of training programs. They're running continuously throughout the whole year. So I got to really get a good insight into how content is built, how schools do learning, and how training works. And I was supporting the company strategy in terms of learning and development strategies, programs. COVID obviously changed, the learning space. So I was involved in a lot of strategic work there in terms of how learning is changing, what the adult learners actually want now, and things like that. So that was 4.5 years. So around beginning of this year, I was thinking about my next career move and where to head to next. So I was thinking, shall I apply for jobs or things like that? And then this franchise opportunity came up here, and I thought, well, I've got 10 years here. I've been consulting with clients for 10 years and seen some of the best learning systems, that money can buy really in some of these companies. So why not try my own hand? Essentially. So in May of this year, I took the plunge and I quit my job and I started this company, So LinguaLearn, we're now, it was originally set up. So when I bought the franchise over, it was a language school. So that's all there. But I've evolved the business as well. So we're doing a lot of skills training. And I also help companies with their learning and development strategies and things like that too.
And so was there a kind of a moment that made it clear for you, I want to step out of large organizations and go and do my own thing? Yeah,
I mean, it's very nerve-wracking, I'll be honest, and I spoke to a lot of people and a lot of friends about it, but the consensus that was all there, they were all like, it's brave, but it's really cool that you're going to try this. And I just felt like if I try and break everything down in my life to as most straightforward as possible. I find if there's too much stuff going on, then you can't make a decision, right? So I'm like, what's the most simple question? So I boiled it down to, if I didn't do this, how would I feel in 20 years? Would I look back and go, I really should have taken that plunge and do that? And the answer was yes. I was like, even if this doesn't work out, I have to try. because even if it doesn't work, at least I know. So I just boiled it down. That was very straightforward in the end of like, how would I look back on this in 20 years? And that was it really. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to try it.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that comes up a lot, is that people really, they don't maintain regrets about having tried something. They really only maintain regrets about having not tried something. And so now you find yourself in a totally different type of professional status. You know, essentially you're running a business. You're the one who, even previously as a manager, but now you have even more responsibility. How has that been? How has that change or that transition been for you?
It's actually quite a huge change, to be honest, because in my last job, I had a team of 9, right? So most of the admin, the back end work, everything like that is all run, right? So my role as leader is just to keep tabs on that stuff, right? But I know that all the customer service stuff is being done, the finance stuff's all being done and things like that. But now running my own company, I mean, I've just brought on someone to help me, but for the first couple of months, it was all me, right? Sending out, all the paperwork, financial documents, invoicing, had to do, tax returns and claim things with the government. I mean, it's all like, it's going back to how I started in my career, really. I feel like I'm 21 again, or like 20 years old again, like having to do all this stuff. So it's good that I've done it in the past, so I kind of know the processes, but it's been a bit of a heavy lift getting back into all of that, because for years now, I'm so used to just doing strategy work. Okay. And I'm like analyzing stuff, but it's it's complex spreadsheets and things like that. So I'm used to all of that quite strategic way of trying to think and work, right? So having to do that plus this has actually been quite challenging, but it's just something that you just have to do. You have to plow through it, and work through that. But one thing that I've found throughout my career is you got to talk to people, right? Okay. So at the Chamber now, I'm part of a small business group. So we meet once a month and I sit down with them and we have conversations about, what software can you use and what processes have you got and things like that. And I just have coffees with people and work through stuff, and I get, recommendations of, people I can hire, software and tools. So that's been really great. So I've managed to automate a lot of stuff, because I think running a business 15, 20 years ago was a lot harder than current day, because some of the tools out there are just fantastic. I had to send an invoice out to a client and the template's all done for you. Information bank is all there. I've just got to type in the price and the product. And, so it doesn't actually take that long, some of this stuff now. So I think it's about being smart, and running a business. You got to think about your cost management and things like that, right? So some advice that someone passed down to me was, don't buy tools that you don't need yet. You will need them, but don't invest yet, right? So I'm staggering things like that, right? So I'm like, I need these tools now, so I'm going to pay for them now. I'm going to use them now. I know I'm going to need these tools in the future, but do I actually need them yet? No. So let's put that to one side. So I think it's about prioritizing the admin that works for the business now, rather than just trying to set up the whole lot, right? Because I think that can get quite overwhelming. And frankly, I'm doing a lot of consulting right now. And if I'm spending all my days and time on processes and the systems and things like that, I can't get that real work. So I think I have to just prioritize things.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, and it's great that you've kind of embraced that, because you can have the best systems and best processes in the world if you're not actually producing revenue streams and delivering projects, then it doesn't achieve anything. And you're right, there's also now an unlimited amount of tools out there, and I even find that, of course, you can be using a tool that can be perfectly good for you, and it develops. It gets even better. And of course, it's almost like you're all forever on the lookout for a good tool to make sure, because also your business also develops and changes, needs change, and so then that also happens to change as well. So on a daily basis, when we think about getting stuff done, what is it that makes you get out of bed? What is the thing that makes you think, okay, I've got probably a never-ending to-do list. but what is it that is your kind of personal driver?
It's a great question, really. So ADHD, I don't know if you know a lot about it, about having ADHD and things like that, but that's something that I've had since I was a kid, right? So ADHD changes how your brain works. So often if you're trying to focus on too much stuff, the front cortex of your brain actually turns off. And when you're relaxed, then it turns on, right? So there's all these different things. I've had to, throughout my career, really understand my brain and how my brain works, right? So something with ADHD is when you're motivated with stuff, then you really can work really hard, right? And you get really stuck in. So when I started this company, I was like, some of the other questions I asked myself, will I have the motivation, right? And I was like, well, I'm passionate about learning. I'm passionate about training, supporting companies, supporting people. So just that intrinsic motivation each day when I get out of bed is like, I'm curating something really great with my company, right? I'm making a positive change. So I know that when I come out, when I'm writing proposals, when I'm consulting clients, taking courses and doing things like that, I have a lot of motivation there, right? So I feel like whatever I do, I've got to have that inside of me, right? Because we all have good days and bad days where we think, oh, I'm tired today, or I can't do this or that. But you got to have that foundational motivation there, right? So I always try and find roles that I know I'm going to be really passionate. Mm-hmm. And that's something that for me is an important part, right? So, in my last company, the senior role was based in the United States. So I was like, well, I can't do that move. So I was thinking about, well, what's my motivation? It's career pathway, right? It's my growth. So starting a business is going to give me a lot of growth there, right? It's going back to finding new clients, consulting, the stuff that I really love. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I know that the motivation, right, that's going to be part of it, right? But like getting out of bed in the morning is like, you have to, I think, be really clear about what you want to achieve on that day. Mm-hmm. And what tasks are going to be the most valuable in the business, because there's nothing worse than working on something that you feel is not adding that much value, right? So every day it's a little priority list in my head of I've got to get this done and that done, right? And then within all of that, might have that focus for some time, and then knowing how my brain works, I take those regular breaks. Because in those breaks, I might be having a cup of tea, doing some reading or something like that. My brain is still working hard. So when I come back, so I might get stuck on a proposal or think, okay, what does the client want? How am I going to phrase this? If I stop working, I take that break, I come back to it, and suddenly my brain's working again. And I think, I can change this and I can do that and things like that. So it's understanding, I think, what motivates me the most. And when I can get stuff done in a day, it's understanding how my brain thinks and works so that I can maximize that time. And, to me, there's no shame in taking those regular breaks and things like that, because I always find that downtime period really helps me think. And also, I have coffees with people. I go to talks and events, networking, panels and things like that. Talking to people helps me generate new ideas and things like that. So that's all stuff that I can also take back too. And there's nothing that buzzes me more than like something new, right? Like a new idea, a new learning point, things like that.
I also sense you have a very good self-awareness. I think that, you're clearly showing that you're thinking about how your own motivation works. Which I think is also an important point. A lot of people will not have that, and then they only do the stuff they enjoy or the easy stuff. How do you make sure that you get the stuff that you don't want to get done? Do you have any special insights?
It's not always easy, I can tell you, right? Because doing some of that admin and things like that is not stuff that I'm always, that motivated in order to not that motivated at times. So what I do is I know that I thrive under pressure. So what I do is I build some stuff around me to have that on me, right? So if it's a client, I'll say I will give them a deadline even if I don't have to. I'll say the invoice will come at this date, or this will be done at that date, right? So I'm always giving a deadline. So for that, I build that pressure on me because I know I have to get it done then, right? That's going to drive me, and I'm motivated that, right? So I know that this has to be done at this time, and I hold myself to that, right? So even if it's not a client, even if it's a partner that I'm working with, even if they're casual about it, at such a time is fine, I'll say, no, I'll have it by that time, because I know that when I wake up, I have to get it done. So I find that pressure on me works really, really well.
Yeah, I mean that's great that you have that mechanism that. I also use that one myself. A self-imposed deadline, to hold myself accountable to it as well. And have you ever had a time when you have really struggled with that? Has there been a time when you really faced something that you had to get done and you just put it off, you delayed, or something even that you kind of failed at and then needed to turn it around? Have you ever...
Yeah, well, I'll share quite a personal story here on this. So I was in London and did my job there. I was working in stores, I was doing admin and things like that, and I moved to head office. So I was in the purchasing team and the buying team. So that was a very exciting role and it was great. And I was going to be promoted in that role during that time. But my partner, she got a scholarship to move to Holland to do studying. So she was going to take a master's there. So I was like, well, I've never lived in another country. Fine, So I flew there a few times and I found a role, which was great. But it was a cold calling job, right? I do have a stammer, so it's coming out fine now. But trust me, when I'm on calls and pitching and stuff like that, it can be very challenging. So I go there and I know this is going to be hard. I know from day one, but I was like, this is the only job, right? I've applied for, 100 things. This is the role, and I haven't got much money, so that's it really. So I moved to Holland. I did the training for the first week, which was really great. And then week 2, so I'm starting, the phone is in front of me, I'm starting to die. And that was probably one of the hardest weeks in my professional life because I'm picking up the phone. My pitch is there, but I can't say it very well. I'm really, really nervous. So I'm stammering a lot and not getting through very well, not making that much progress. And then there was one call where I started talking and completely just honestly screwed up the whole thing, and then they put the phone down. And then I just got up and I left the office and I just felt horrible. I was just like, I can't do this. In my mind, I was like, I can't do it. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, I can't do this job. I haven't got the, whatever it is.
Yeah.
This is just not me. And it was just really tough because I always felt that I was good at sales and good at that kind of thing. So for me, it was extremely hard to reconcile that. And I was starting to question all things about what I can do in my life and capabilities and all this kind of stuff. And it was really challenging. So I called my partner and I was on the phone and I was pretty, upset. And she just said, what are you doing? Just go back and dial. You're going to be fine. Like, just plow through it and all this kind of stuff. She kind of gave me that. She's like, what choice have you got? Okay. You just have to do it. Like, this is your job. This is it. Like, there is nothing else there. You have to make this work, right? So I had some lunch and I picked myself up and I just went back and I was like, I just have to do it. I have to get through this. And I can't tell you the confidence that gave me plowing through in that role. I felt once I started doing that, I was like, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. Right. Like, if I'm not afraid to call people, cold call with a stammer, and then my confidence came back. And the first client I landed was the club Ajax, if you know Ajax, with the football team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So they were my first client for some conference sponsorships and things like that. And my boss at the time, he was a fan of Ajax, and he's like, I can't believe Ajax are one of our clients. He was over the moon. And then they gave me some free passes, and I went to one of the games, and I was sitting behind former players and stuff, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I've done it. I closed the deal, and it's with not just like a small business. This is a major company, with a major sports team, and that kind of completely turned things around for me. And look, the stammering still happens, and I still had bad calls and things like that, but I always felt there's always another client there, right? And I can do this. And I do remember I was calling a client in Switzerland, and I couldn't close him for half a year, right? Because our products didn't align and all this kind of stuff. Okay. But I was taught in my sales course to just keep the relationship and keep going. Yeah. So it got to the point where one point I was calling him and I was like, hi, it's and he was like, hey, Joe, how are you? He just knew who it was because of my stammer. And I did close him in the end for some stuff because we just built a relationship. So he just made it into a bit of a joke, right? And, a little bit of fun. I just realized, don't take that aspect of me that seriously. And if people are going to put the phone down and judge, then that's fine. I just carry on and I got to move on. So that was, I would say, a big life-changing kind of experience having to go. And it was 12 months and it was very, very tough. But, Yeah, that kind of turned things around for me, and it made me kind of reconcile a lot with my speech impediment of just like, I can get stuff done, I can improve, I can grow, and just not to worry about, all that other noise, continue and get on. So yeah, that's my personal sharing there.
And I mean, thank you for sharing. And it sounds like you really have maintained that kind of like almost invincibility shield, to this day from that experience, because you were at that, very significant moment. You could have not gone back, and yet you went back and you made it happen, and kind of proved to yourself and others that you can. And I think, of course, we hear a lot of stories about people facing adversity, that often is the source of people really achieving their greatest things. And I look around myself, people around me, and see them potentially what maybe on the outside looks like an easy life, right? You can look at someone and judge them looking like everything is all rosy. And of course, you never know what's going on for them personally in their private life. They might be going through something which is incredibly difficult, nothing related to the job, but which makes their job difficult, or vice versa. So that's always something that I've kind of remembered as well, especially in a client service kind of orientation. I love the fact that you maintained that relationship for so long that it eventually led to closing. So let's step into now the L&D field, which is, of course, the area which you're very much specialised in. And it's, in a sense, the Get Stuff Done project we've set up this year is also addressing perhaps an area of people's personal and professional development that they feel there's something missing, or they feel that they're not getting where they want to be, and that's what we're trying to address with the project. And so part of the podcast was to try to bring people's experiences to a wider audience who have been there and done that to a certain extent. Your main area of experience with L&D is, of course, in the kind of the corporate large organization. And my experience of people in a lot of people in large organizations are anti L&D. They feel that a lot of people maybe even feel that training is a waste of time. It's taking away from the real job. It's something that is later. Always kind of put it off. What do you say to people or organizations who aren't really prioritizing the development of their people?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the feedback that you're hearing is really common kind of feedback, and for me, it stems from the fact that HR, in some organizations and managing like that, they, the intentions are really good, right? We want training. Training is great. It can build morale, engagement skills, and that kind of thing. But the gap there is they send people on training and that's it, right? So they'll arrange a course. It's a great course, fantastic trainer. It's all fun and games, and then they come off the course and that's it, right? It's tips and that box, right? And that's when you get the comments of it's a waste of time. Why am I on this kind of thing? And I've heard that, right, a lot. And one of the problems with that is the learning needs analysis isn't there. You've kind of ticked that box and said, right, we've got a course running, we've got 20 people on it, great, right? It's a great course, and then we're going to learn something. But how do you know it's all relevant to their roles? How do you know they even want that, right? Or are they just going on the training to take a break? Are they going on it because that's the only training? And things like that. There's lots of reasons behind that. So then you really got to take a step back and you got to think, have you done that learning needs analysis within the organization, right? That's the first stage. You actually know about the learning needs within the company. Lots of different levels to that, right? So you've got the individual staff and the learning needs, and you've got the line managers as well. What are your priorities within your team and your department and your learning needs? Then you've got those structures around that too, right? So, okay, so you've done the learning needs. Are the line managers equipped to properly consult and coach their staff on those learnings, right? So are they having those conversations with it? Or is it just, well, we've done the learning needs, okay, great, we're going to arrange that training or this training. Key of step 2 is a workshop isn't always the answer, right? So I might have a learning need, but there's lots of different forms of learning out there, right? A stretch project, that could help. It could be a coaching program. It could be anything, right? So don't think a solution is straight to a 2-day training course, because that's not always right. And even if you've got that right, you've done the learning needs, you know the course is right for those people, it's going to help them in their career paths. Is it linked back to behaviors within the organization? Is it all linked together? Even once you've done all of that, a lot of people stop at what the feedback we say is like, so the feedback after the workshop, that's like stage one kind of feedback, right? So was it fun? Were the snacks good? Was the room good? The facilitator good? All that kind of stuff, right? So that's all well and good, right? And you need that. But like, are you just stopping there? Or do you move to level 2, which have they actually learned something? So are you coming back after the training to have those coaching conversations, which normally is done by the line manager, but it's like a checkup. So a month later, do you actually still know that stuff? Have you learned something? Then you're looking at the behavioral change. Are you actually going to change something? So when you come off of that course, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're going to change? If it's a line manager course, it could be something, it's a project management, it could be stakeholder engagement, anything. So what's your plan for that behavioral change, right? So even when they're setting those learning goals, do you have actually a plan in place for once the training is done? What's actually going to happen? And are you making sure that they're motivated for that change and holding the person accountable for that too, right? And then you've got like even the next stage after that, right? What's the impact, right? What's the positive change that you've seen within the organization? And of course, continual learning, right? So did it work out? Did it not work out? What can we learn? How can we improve, right? So once you start building those structures within an organization, you'll find that your training costs can actually go down, because you're not just doing workshops all the time, right? You're saving people's time and saving money for the organization. You're building relationships internally because you're making sure line managers and staff, those relationships are very strong, which by the way, engagement in companies, a huge amount of engagement comes from the line manager. So you're actually building engagement within the company too, right? And then are you actually tracking the results of that change as well, right? You implement some of this stuff and you start seeing motivations change within the organization. People are now excited about training. Why? Because they feel like it's personal to them. It's helping them with what they want to do. It's helping them achieve their goals within the organization, right? So we really have to move away from the model of, well, this is the hot topic right now, I'm going to send everyone on training. Some it's going to work out, but for many or most, it's not going to change anything, right? So move away from that model and move much more into a strategic model when it comes to learning and development. And honestly, it feels like a lot of work, but the amount of money and time that can be saved is actually crazy.
And I guess as you're talking about motivation there and then productivity, probably also feeds into increased retention as well, which could also be a huge saving.
Absolutely. I mean, you look up any study there by any of the big consulting firms and things like that. There was a McKinsey study done. There were 4 big drivers of why people stay, and 3 of them were linked to learning and development, right? 3 of the 4. I think pay was the other number one, pay and compensation for that. But 3 of them were all linked to learning. It was, am I actually learning during the role? It's about their career paths and career growth and things like that. So, if you get your learning right, 75% of the key motivators for people to join your company and stay at your company are linked to learning and development. So if you get that right, the effect on your business is like hugely powerful. You can attract great people and you can keep great people as well.
Yeah, I apologize if this is a really tricky question. How do you bring companies around from that mentality that it's a workshop for the trendy topic and let's send everyone on off-site and make sure there's good snacks? What's the path to getting a company to change their perspective on that?
That's interesting because I find it's less challenging than I thought that it would be. Okay. Right? When I'm sitting down with HR directors and people like that, they all want this as well, right? Because one of the biggest problems I think that we've seen in learning across the board is the return on investment. And learning is always the first thing to be cut when there's a downturn, there's no money available, right? So HR are always looking for tools to demonstrate that the learning investment is worth it in the organization, right? Yeah. So actually, I find that people actually really want these tools within the organization because we all know, people who work in HR and learning development, we know that learning is good. We know that organizations need to do learning and development, but proving that case is not so straightforward. You look at all the studies and that's fine. So that's kind of the business case. But then when a CEO or chief financial officer goes, okay, so what's the monetary value? How is this helping the organization, right, on the bottom line? Because no matter what, nowadays you have to show that in some regard to show that. And that's one of the hardest things in learning because it's people change, it's behavioral change. A lot of it is very intangible. So actually what we need in this industry is to build more tangible tools out there. And yeah, it surprised me when I started consulting with a lot of these people is that they all want this. So it wasn't a difficult conversation to start. How we do that is a whole nother thing, right? Because it requires change processes. We might have to do some skills training for the learning team. So there's all kinds of behavioral, cultural change that might need to happen within the organization. So that can be something else. But in terms of opening that dialogue, I find that most companies really want these tools.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. And you mentioned their skills-based training. One of the key elements of our Get Stuff Done project is development of transferable skills. The idea that if an individual can arm themselves with enhanced transferable skills, they will themselves build a more valuable personal brand for themselves, which can enhance their career, either internally or externally and beyond into the future. Straight off the top of your head, what do you consider to be the most valuable transferable skill?
I mean, it's got to be branding and communication.
Okay.
Nowadays has to be number one. Because I've seen it, I'm sure that you've seen it in our careers, that someone who's amazing at their job, working super hard, the results are there, but they don't get the bonus or promotion or anything. And one of the problems is they've got their heads down, right? And they're working really hard. But if you don't have your head up, if you're not networking internally, if you're not communicating well, if you haven't got that personal brand, it's going to be really tough, right? Yeah. So I find that the biggest effect that you can have is when you're on work calls, are you speaking well? Are you communicating well? Are you hearing people, right? Are you responding well? Are you in your emails? Are you writing well and things like that, right? Are you building a personal brand? Are you finding that fine art between telling people all the great stuff that you're working on, which is not always great. It can sound kind of rude and arrogant, but also, finding a way, instead of telling people, just showing people through your conversation, the projects you're doing and the impact that you're having on them. Yeah. And I think people lose sight of building your network internally as well, right? A lot of us go out to events and we network, but the internal networks within your company are really powerful and key too, right? And you can tap onto those people. So, if people listening to this and they want to just keep the focus on one thing, I'd say make sure that your personal brand within your company and outside is really strong and you're communicating, right? Yeah. And honestly, there's lots of online courses out there that are basic, that are free or very low cost that will take you through and will help you through that. But yeah, I mean, everything I've read, I mean, if you go onto Harvard, they said the number one skill is meeting people, networking. That's what Harvard's saying now. For career growth and development, learning, it is number one.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad that I met you, and I'm so glad that you communicate so well so that we can enjoy this conversation. I mean, I fully agree with what you're saying. If we think about one of the mantras for good presentation is that you tell the people what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you've told them. So essentially it goes in 3 times. And I think that, it's very easy to just be working hard and getting on with what you're doing. But like you say, you have to make sure that you get that recognition in order that you can proceed. Okay, well, I mean, thank you so much for sharing as part of this podcast and being our guest today, Joe. It's been a real pleasure to hear about your journey from different countries and through L&D. And now, representing your own business and doing your own thing, which does take a lot of courage, especially in a foreign country, as I know all too well myself. So with that, once again, a big thank you for being on the guest show today.
Great. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
And so today it's been absolutely fantastic to hear about the journey that Joe's been on across different countries and sectors, building learning and development functions within companies, and now, of course, doing it as a business owner with LinguaLearn in Singapore. It's also a great example of how you can meet somebody very briefly in a foreign country, and if you keep in touch, then you can find yourselves crossing paths again. It's only a matter of months ago that the two of us met for the first time, and here we are again being able to have this great conversation. So if that is also another good example of getting stuff done, then I'm very glad to also share that. Finally, I would like to tell everybody a big thank you for listening to this episode. Please do remember to subscribe. It will really help us to grow the podcast and be able to reach out to even more people when it comes to getting stuff done. Thank you.